Welcome to the latest video for Unpacking with the Pack Scout. Been a little bit quieter as we get towards the end of the year, but I thought I would just do this last one before the end of the year, as it's a very timely and topical area. So what a lot of people will have seen over the last few days, weeks, months is a number of companies that are continuing to move from plastic into paper. And the overall tone of most of the messages is usually to do with sustainability. So they're talking about how they are removing various large amounts of plastic from the waste stream, and that waste which would not be recycled is therefore a very good thing, because it means that we're not clogging up the oceans or the land with material that is not recyclable and single use and generally not very good for anything, including the environment. And it's a wonderful idea, and it's a wonderful strategy to have. Unfortunately, it's not exactly correct. And so this has been going on a while now, and I thought I'd speak about it to try and explain in a little bit more detail why it's important to get the details right, and also some of the key things to consider when people are having this conversation around us, to better understand what the facts are, to better be informed, so that as a consumer, we're able to take part in these conversations, to feel like we understand how it benefits us. So the one that triggered this particular video is Delta Airlines have announced with great fanfare that they have moved all of the cups that we drink out of when we're in an airplane from plastic into paper. The headline quotes are that they've saved 7 million tons of plastics by doing so, and that this is a significant part of their sustainability journey, because nobody has yet done what they have done, which is apparently created a paper cup that is 100% recyclable and therefore can be a more sustainable material, easier to recycle, easier to reclaim, easier to put into the stream and get back again, so that you can continue to reuse it, all of which are wonderful things. The problem with that statement is that it's not entirely accurate. So starting with the big one, every time people talk about the removal of plastic and the movement into paper, the average amount of paper you need to replace plastic ends up normally being about 5 or 6 to 1 times. So in theory, if you are removing a ton of plastic, you are having to replace it with 5 or 6 tons of paper. Now, when you bear in mind that a single sheet of A4 paper takes about 10 gallons of water to make, and obviously paper is not being made in single A4 pieces, it's being made in vast tons of it. So many thousands, if not millions of tons of water suddenly need to be used to create the paper to make the cups that are replacing this plastic cup. So already, in order to move away from the 7 million tons of plastic cups that they are saving from being put into the environment or being put into a waste stream, you're looking at between about 35 and 40 million tons of paper that now needs to be made to fill that gap. All the way through the manufacturing process, the life cycle of that paper cup, it's requiring a lot of water, it's requiring a lot of heat, it requires a lot of resources. The machines that are making the paper cups need to be a little bit thicker. Because they're handling a wider material. They are processing a little bit less material per minute, per day, per hour, however you're using the metrics, because paper is a bit thicker than plastic. So it's going through at a slower rate. You can't send 1,000 feet of paper through something a minute. You can maybe send 500 or 200 or 100. So to get to that 40 million mark of paper volume in tons that is being created for paper cups, you are going to take a lot longer than it takes to make the 7 million tons of plastic cups. It's going to use a lot of resources. It's going to take a lot of time. It's going to be very expensive. All of this is great if the end result means that the paper you're putting into the supply chain is retrievable. So the whole point of recycling is that you want to ideally keep 100% of that paper cup. Something you can do, incidentally, with metal or glass. You take a metal can, you use a metal can, that metal can gets broken down, reformed, shaped back into a metal can, and it is a completely circular product life cycle. That's not the case with paper. Paper, you cannot just use the reclaimed paper to make a new cup. So when they say recycled content, there's always going to be about 25, 26% of that paper has to be new, virgin paper being used to ensure that the product actually has some kind of structural integrity. It would fall apart otherwise. So you're never, in fact, using 100% recycled paper into a sustainable paper cup. It is going to be 75% recycled paper and then 25% new. So that 40 million tons means that it's not 40 million tons once and then it is being circularly reused and reused and reused again. It's going to be 40 million the first time. Maybe it's going to be 30 million the second time or 25 million the second time. But either way, you're going to be using far more materials, resources, and cost to create this paper cup than you were using to make the plastic ones beforehand. And again, all of this would be completely fine, except for the fact that the paper cups that they use historically have needed to have a chemical or plastic lining in them in order to take hot beverages, in order to be able to hold liquid inside them. One of the aspects or characteristics of paper is that it has fibers in it, a little bit like skin. There's literally holes going through the surface layer of it because that's how the bark and the paper actually works. So paper in of itself isn't really a solid barrier to liquids or gas going through because there's small little holes that go through it. So you need to seal it off on the top or the bottom with something to help protect it from leaking out those liquids. So we are now looking at something that takes more materials and resources and time to make. Potentially, they may have found a way around being able to fill those cups with liquids that doesn't involve a small plastic liner or a chemical, which in turn makes it impossible or very difficult to recycle, which in turn would reduce the amount of paper that is being reused every time they're trying to reuse it in their sustainable circular economy manufacturing technique. And all of that is to say that when they announce these things and when they have questions back, myself and a number of other people have asked them repeatedly to kind of explain their thinking and their rationale and their logic a little bit better, because when they make a sweeping statement such as, Delta have moved the industry forward for the first time in 70 years because this new use of paper cups is groundbreaking and innovative and super sustainable. And these are all wonderful things that they are trying to achieve as a major airline. But the fact that it's not entirely accurate, the fact that it's using more materials, more resources, the supply chain and the life cycle analysis of the entire thing is very difficult to uncover cleanly or simply, but given all of the information that I have about the manufacturing life cycle of these different products, I would be amazed if the life cycle analysis of the total manufacture of these paper cups is not 2 or 3 times worse than the plastic it's replacing. So they're not, in fact, taking a step forwards towards sustainability. They are taking a step back, but cloaking it under the guise of talking about a sustainable development, which is greenwashing, and something that obviously most consumers are not delighted by. So if you take something that is not really sustainable, you tell us that it is, and then there's a lot of fanfare about this sustainable journey that's being taken by an industry like the airlines, where ultimately they could replace all of it with completely compostable materials that degrades the moment that we're finished with it, and it could be like it never existed. And even if they had that magical ability to do that with cups and food and beverage and all the stuff they serve on an airline, you could be left with the fact that an airplane burns an enormous amount of fuel. All these savings are moving the needle 1 or 2%. In the same way as for years there was all this focus on what can packaging do to be more sustainable in cleaning, in laundry, and the answer is turn the machine down to 30 degrees, because the difference between 30 and 40 degrees is something like 60% or 70% of the emissions. And so in the same way here, finding a way of not burning incredibly emitting fuel for an airplane will save a lot more emissions and resources and cause a lot less of a detrimental impact onto the planet than figuring out how to deal with the 1% or the 2% of the potential problem, which is what we put our food and drink into in the airlines themselves. So a little bit of a rant. It's hopefully not as lecturing, because that's not my intent at all. All I wanted to explain today was why it's important to be accurate when you look at the details of these things, and why when we see a statement like we're making a sustainable impact with our paper cups for plastic cups, it's worth thinking a little bit more about what that actually involves, because it's a little bit like looking at the tip of the iceberg and thinking it's going to be completely fine and not concentrating on the mass amount below that's the dangerous part. So I wish everybody a wonderful and very happy new year. Looking forward to coming back with lots of new exciting news in the new year. And I look forward to speaking to you all very soon. Thank you.